All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Corrie Lo Show. It is Monday morning. What is today's date? It's been forever. It's the 27th of April, 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you so much for joining me. Today, we're going to be talking about all things financial planning to prevent, the disaster, right? So you definitely don't want to miss out. You want to stick around. We're going to be talking. I'm actually on with Matt Newman. I'm so sorry about that. Matt Newman, who is a financial services wholesaler and father to three, who was diagnosed with brain cancer at the age of 39. So he's got some great tips for us on, planning during a financial disaster or disaster planning, I guess you could say. And we're going to go ahead and dive right into it. So hold on. Hey, Matt.
How you doing?
Oh, and I can't hear you. Hold on. I can't hear you.
I hear you perfectly.
Oh, you hear me. There you are.
All
We can hear
right.
you just fine now. Yeah, thank you. How's it going today?
It's another day. It's a new normal. It's something we're all taking in. We're getting a different perspective on things, that become our normal lives. And, it's one of the things I talk about often is we often learn the greatest lessons in life at the deepest and darkest of times. And this is somewhat of a microcosm of that right now, with basic things like shaking people's hands and going to a sports game and, having dinner with friends out. I mean, that's all changed drastically.
That it has. So tell us a little bit about your story, because I know for those of you guys who aren't familiar, I did a TED Talk not too long ago, and Matt was one of the speakers that was at the event with me, and we got to connect afterwards, and I heard about his story, and I thought it was amazing. He should really come on and share it with you guys. So why don't you fill us in a little bit about your story and how, we're here today, what we're talking about.
Yeah, it's really fascinating because when you look at the U.S. education system, we start going to school, and the goal is to eventually put us into the real world. Some leave school early. Some leave after they go to high school. Some go on to get their college degree. Some, then there's doctorates and lawyers and grad school, all this other stuff. We focus on educating people to be able to take on challenges and start their lives. The reality is we teach them nothing about money. We teach them nothing about their employee benefits, nothing about the insurance, nothing basic things what a 401k is, on how to do proper saving. So we do a very poor job of that. And what happens is it leads to regret, resentment, negativity on things I shoulda, woulda, could have done. I started my career in 1997. I grew up in the house of my father, who was a financial advisor, and my mother was a school teacher. It was two completely different occupations, but there were a lot of these seeds that were planted into my belly at a young age that meant nothing to me at that point. But as I would get older, they would bloom and they would start to make perfect sense to me. And the basics of financial planning, the mistake that we have in this country, we can call it, is we hear the term financial planning and it makes us think of investments. I could let you know that's one of the least important part of financial planning. It's almost an irrelevancy. That will offend some people when I say it that way, but the reality is financial planning is done through basic legal documentation. There's something called a will. There's something called a power of attorney. Let's say I go through a horrible time and I become incapacitated. My power of attorney allowed me to elect who will make the financial decisions in my life, or the decisions on my life, or what they're going to do. Basic things you can go on LegalZoom to do that we don't educate anybody on. And then what happens is when we go through difficult times, we look back and we're going, oh, I should have done this, I should have done that. And it creates all this negativity. So growing up in this industry, to make it very quick for you, I learned this. This became nomenclature to me. It became real. It became pure. So when I started my career, I started as what's called a wholesaler. My father wouldn't let me join his firm. He said, you got to go out and earn it first and we'll talk. And my father's doesn't run a huge firm or whatnot, but he was telling me there's no free lunches out there. So I go become a wholesaler. What a wholesaler is when a company makes mutual funds, life insurance, annuities, 401ks, whatever it may be. They have a sales force that gets all the same licenses as all financial advisors, and they go out and they try to show them why you should use our products in this situation. And I came from three basic rules that my father taught me. Number one was, if you don't believe in the products you sell, you wouldn't buy them, don't sell them. Lose the battle to win the war. It's always about putting people's best interest first and creating pure honesty and trust. Number two was never lie. Always be honest. And that was easy. I had a horrible thing that happened to me in life that every time I lied, I smiled real bad. So I just stopped doing it completely because I gave it away. I was just bad at it. I don't know. I couldn't keep a straight face. Be a terrible poker player to play with. And number 3 was work ethic. If you help people plan for the worst case scenario, you help them put that plan in place and you're honest with them and you outwork other people, things are going to go well for you. So I needed to go do this wholesaling side of it, use these lessons I was given from financial planning side, and basically say 3 comments every time I saw somebody. The job of the financial advisor is to be there when the job is to give good news when people need it the most. The job is to give some semblance of hope to allow people to focus on the fight at hand and know that their planning was done. And that's all I did. And in 1997, I started my business. By 2001, I became the top person at my company. And by 2003, I was the top person in the entire industry. And I remember my father calling me and said, "Not bad, huh?" I'm like, "Not too bad, Dad, right?" He said, "I think we should talk about you joining my firm." I said, "You can't afford me any longer, Dad. That's not going to happen." And I found my calling. I found my career. And it was just a different component of financial planning, but it was something that I took to. But we also believed you practice everything you preach. And I remember when my wife was pregnant with our first child, and my dad said to me, "What do you say every day? Jobs to be there when things are bad. Have a plan in advance of the negative." And I'm all fired up. Because you do everything you say? Go, "Absolutely." Because you're about to be a dad. Did you do your will? Did you do your power of attorney? Did you do the proper life insurance planning? It's not about how much money you have. That's what people think. It's not. These basic plans you can put in place are extremely inexpensive to do, but they avoid major issues going down the road. I said, "Well, Dad, great health, fitness free." He goes, "Do you do everything you say?" Because that's what you say every day to people. Over the next 2 weeks, I did it all. I got everything taken care of that I would need to. None of it had to do with investments. Some of it you could do on legal Zoom for $15. It's basic things that allowed you to focus on the fight when negativity hits you and avoid all the bad stuff. So we'd go through everything. And then in 2010, so 4 years after I got married, my father-in-law was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And my wife and my father-in-law were unbelievably close. We grew up in 2 very different environments. I grew up outside New York City in Northern Jersey, teacher, financial advisor for parents. My wife grew up in mining country, Pennsylvania, all the way in the middle of nowhere. Dad was a janitor, her mom was a janitor, her dad was a highway construction worker. She was Catholic, I was Jewish, 2 very different lifestyles. But the minute I met them, I knew they were just amazing people, and we just got along unbelievably well. He was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer when I had 2 children under 3 and a pregnant wife. And my wife made it her full-time job to drive him back and forth single day to do whatever she needed to do. It was inspirational. It was amazing to watch. And all his planning for someone who had almost no money at all was all done. It was focusing on beating this and being there for his 3 grandkids so he could see all of them born and they could build real memories of him. I watched a warrior. It was amazing, this experience of seeing no bitching, no complaining, doing what we needed to do to be there. In 2013, he was 3 years into this. And pancreatic cancer usually got about a 6-month shelf life. And he just fought and fought. And again, it was an honor to watch this. And in 2013, I got in a car accident, driving on my way to work, suit and tie. And it was an icy, snowy, miserable day in the town of Bridgewater, New Jersey. And all the cars were doing 20 miles per hour. There was fender benders all over the side of the road. And I remember saying, "Not today, man. I don't feel like dealing with this. I'm doing like 20 miles an hour." I get up to the next traffic light, flew right into the car in front of me. When I hit the brakes, hydroplane flipped over into the median, went over, and I was holding on to that steering wheel, thinking all that working out I do for this. Airbag went off. And I got out of the car, was total. I got out without a scratch on my body. Police come over to me like, "Dude, you got to get to the hospital right now." And I was like, "No, beast mode. I'm cool. I got this, man." And then I called my wife. I told her, "Hey, listen, I'm okay." She was taking her dad down for chemotherapy. As this roller coaster of cancer would go up and down. It didn't care what anybody wanted. It did what it wanted, when it wanted. I called her. She goes, "You got to go to the hospital." I'm like, No, I'm cool." She goes, "Don't forget about our friend Karen Mancini. We have a friend named Karen Mancini who's in a town called Blue Bell, Pennsylvania. Gets T-boned at a red light one day. And the police say to her, "Listen, let's just get you to the hospital just to make sure you're okay." 3 hours later, 2 doctors walked into the room and said, "We want you to send flowers and a thank you note to the person that hit you. We just found a brain aneurysm. You'd be dead about 3 hours from now." I thought about my kids. I thought about my wife. And like a
Mhm.
type A personality, I rented a car and I went on my way. And when
Mhm.
I came home that night, my father-in-law is sitting on the couch going through chemo. My wife is in the kitchen and I'm sitting there going, oh man, my head is killing me. Did I possibly like bang my head? Like, don't remember it? She looks at me, she goes, did you go to the hospital? I go, no. She goes, I have chronic migraines. Don't really want to hear about your headache right now. And she went on her
Mhm.
way. Over the next 2 weeks, the pain got more and more severe every day. It got to a point where I lost all ability to sleep. And I started having what I thought strokes in my speech. I speak professionally. So I'd be out
Mhm.
giving a presentation. And as I went to make a point, I felt a hot flash hit me like a pregnant woman would feel. And when that hot flash would hit me, slur and gurgle would pour out of my mouth. I didn't know where I was. I didn't know what was
Mhm.
going on. But I remember the first time it happened, seeing myself standing outside my body going, you're having a stroke. You are having a stroke right now. On May 14th, 2018, I had my 11th, what I thought was a stroke. I was about 300 people I'm speaking in front of on finance, everything we're talking about here.
Mhm.
And as that hot flash hit me, I went, that's it, I'm done. I turned my back on everybody to point to a
Mhm.
PowerPoint so they didn't have to see what was happening to my face. It actually lasted about 5 to 6 seconds. It felt like an eternity, but by the 11th one, I
Mhm.
knew that. I knew, like, just turn around, let the drool and everything pour out of you, and you'll be okay. I walked out of there, went to my car, drove right to the hospital. And my wife was going to meet me there as she was driving my father-in-law home from chemotherapy. I
Mhm.
get to the hospital, a place called Capitol Health in Hopewell, New Jersey. We walk in, tell the doctor what's going on. He goes, we're going to give you a CAT scan. I'm like, CAT scan? That's right. Let's do this, man.
Mhm.
CAT scan's easy. Gives me a CAT scan. 3 hours later, they walk in. They go, Mr. Newman, we know the problem. I'm like, yeah, let's diagnose it, fix it. Let's get this thing done.
Mhm.
You're having massive pain because you have a lesion right here. Now, to me, a lesion is a cut or a bruise. So I'm thinking, probably hit my head in that car accident. I probably don't remember it. Okay. Massive pain. I'm like, oh, you don't know half of it. It's causing you to lose all ability to sleep. I'm like, yes. Mr.
Wow.
Newman, you're not having strokes. You're having seizures on the left frontal lobe of your brain, which causes speech and memory to be an issue. Sounds tough to take in. I was like, yeah, finally, that's the
Mhm.
deal. Let's do it. What do we got to do to fix it? We got to give you an MRI, MRA, all this other stuff. They walk me through everything they got to do. So I'm going through hours and hours of MRIs. And around 3 o'clock in the morning, my wife says, I need to go home. I got to make lunch for our kids who are 5 years and under, 3 of them. Let me
Wow.
find a ride for my father. He's got to go back down for chemotherapy. I'll be back in like an hour and a half. I go, I got to go in the tube one last time anyway with contrast for an MRI, MRA to see something. So they come in to get me. And the nurse brings in a wheelchair. She goes, all right, Mr. Newman, get in the wheelchair. We got to bring you down. I'm like, I could walk. She goes, liability, Mr. Newman. Get in the wheelchair. She comes up behind me. She goes, all right, Mr. Newman, MRI, MRA. We need to see how big your brain tumor is. I
Whoa.
said, it's a lesion. And that was the moment at 39 I was diagnosed with brain cancer. And my head started to move all over the place.
Mhm.
I couldn't get my thoughts together. I was starting to have retrospective on my life. The reality is when you hear you have brain cancer, you think you're going to die. I'm thinking of
Mhm.
my 3 kids. I got a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 2-year-old. I got a father-in-law who's dying of pancreatic cancer. Now my wife's got to deal with this. And
Mhm.
they took me back to my bed, plugged me into about 30 different machines, and I just started to cry. There's something I must have done that caused this. There had to be something I did. And strength is not how big your arms are. Strength is not how much you bench press. Strength is something located deep down in our bellies that at the deepest and darkest of times, we could find it, we can grab it, we could own it. I didn't know I had that, but I saw it,
Mhm.
I took it, and I just started screaming my brains out. And the nurses come running in. They go, oh my God, Mr. Newman, are you okay? And I was like, I'm fine.
Mhm.
That was my pity party. If I was going down, I was going down swinging. I didn't know I had that in me, but when I saw it, it gave me every reason to grab that and make this is my journey. I own this. Cancer is just along for the ride. I'll never turn this over to you because I define my legacy the way I want it to be defined. The minute I allow that to happen someplace else, I had this new clarity of vision, of appreciating life, living in the moment, understanding how fragile things could actually be. So that
Mhm.
next morning, my wife walks in next morning, like an hour later. My wife walks in, wiping her eyes. The surgeon walks in. He goes, let me tell you what we're going to do. I go, let me tell you what you're going to do. You're going to get this crap out of my head and I'm going to take care of the rest. I ain't going anywhere. And he goes, don't move. Comes back, goes, Mr. Newman, 3 days, you're going to have major surgery. We're doing a full craniotomy. We're going to take half your skull off. We're going to remove the tumor. We'll know 10 days later the severity of it. But I want you to read this study from the American Medical Association. What it talked about was coming back from diseases and negativity and something called the downward spiral. And we've all heard the story of the 50-year-old couple who the wife is healthy as a horse, the husband gets sick, comes down with cancer. They've been married for 50 years. He dies. What do we often hear happen 6 months later? She dies. That downward spiral is filled with regret, resentment, negativity. And once you start going down it, getting out of it is really difficult, if possible at all. And all he did is pour gasoline on my fire. Gasoline on, yeah, no, we're really going to get this. So my wife looks at me and she goes, our parents are on the way here. I knew her dad wasn't my father-in-law. He was my cancer partner. He showed me how to handle things with independence, with dignity, to have class in the way he was going to act on everything, and to fight and to be that warrior role model that's there. I started to disagree with my previous thoughts. I used to believe in irony, and that was the moment I started to stop believing in it. But I also know that when your parents hear that your son has brain cancer, they think he's going to die. And my parents they're going to be a mess. So I turned to my wife and I go, do me a favor. She goes, yeah, let me see the iPad for a minute. She goes, yeah, you want to watch a movie or something? I go, no, just give me the iPad. That was the moment I decided I needed to make sure I was going to have everything cleaned up. I was going to have surgery in a couple of days that I might not come out of, or I might be debilitated, or I might be a different person. There's major issues that happen with brain surgery. That was the moment I decided this needs to be taken care of. And I grabbed my iPad and I didn't watch movies. First thing I pulled up was my will. And everything was set up properly. The reality is my youngest daughter, who was 2.5 years old at the time, she wasn't in the will. But if we would teach people the basics of financial planning, she didn't have to be. As long as my wife was alive, everything would funnel through her properly, and then she could readjust it for later on. Box checked. Next thing I pulled up was all my life insurance. It's not how much money you have. There's basic ways to put this in place. And I realized that my wife would never have to pay a mortgage again. They'd be able to maintain their lifestyle, and money would not be an issue. And that's just leverage. Next thing I pulled up was my power of attorney. If I become incapacitated, legally, my wife can make every decision based on finances and what I want. We've had those discussed. And I looked at my investments, my real estate, everything went down. And that was the moment I decided that every speech I ever gave in my 20+ year career was actually about me. I just didn't know it yet. I was the shoemaker whose kids had shoes. I was able to take on the battle because box check. I don't have to worry about that. Nobody learns it in school. Nobody's given some educational process to make sure that they plan for things so that when things are bad, they could focus on the fight at hand and take on the challenge and give it every effort and define their legacy that way. We just assume people will learn it. And that was a moment for me where I realized having that plan in place allowed me to take all my energy and point it towards fighting a disease that has a very difficult time of actually, of me winning. So I went through all that. My father comes into the room, gives me that look. Hey, bud, how you doing? I saw the fear. I saw the anxiety. I saw it in his eyes. You could fake the smile to me all you want. I knew it. I know where you're coming from. And I told my dad to sit on the bed with me. And I pulled out that iPad and I showed him everything. And I took that iPad, I threw it off to the side when we were done talking. I said, Dad, there's only one thing on my mind. He goes, what's that? I go, getting better. I don't have to worry about any of this. My family will financially be taken care of, and though they may miss me, they'll never have to have regret and resentment and the negativity towards what I did. And they'll always look back at the proper planning allowed me to leave a legacy for them, define something for them, because they're the most important people in my lives. And do whatever you want with this. For the first time in my life, I saw my old man from the Bronx break down and start crying. And he just lost it. And he looked at me, he goes, you're going to beat this. I go, I know I'm going to beat it. And he goes, these are the types of stories you're going to share. The necessity of putting things in place. Unfortunately, we don't often understand things until we deal with it personally. It feels like it's so far down the road. Use coronavirus real quick. It's not real. It's no big deal until you meet someone who's got it or you know someone who died. Then things change very, very quickly. And when that happens,
I'm throwing airplanes at me.
Homeschooling in the
Not
room
now.
next door right now.
Go upstairs. Yes, when I'm done working, we'll play, okay? Sorry about that.
Don't be sorry at all.
Coronavirus world we're in now.
Listen, it's the world we're in. But
Yep.
what I took from a lot of this
Mm.
was having a better understanding how fragile life can be.
Mhm.
And understanding how lucky we are. And I learned about living in the moment and appreciating the now. And I started to have this different perspective that I realized was a gift I took from cancer. So it's interesting that I started to write about this kind of stuff. So I would write optimistically and I would talk about my perspective on life and understanding more about my children. And it's not about my cell phone. It's about teaching lessons and having experiences. And I took something from cancer. I own this, that I understand life better.
Mhm.
The hardest part of going through something like that is maintaining the changes that you've made. Often we see people who lose all this weight and they live life differently and then they go right back to the way that they were. How do you not give this stuff back? Reminders are important to understand how fragile things can be. I mean, 1 minute you could turn and your life changes in an instant. And what I found is with that planning, what that allowed me to do was connect with people. So I would send these emails out. Friends and family. I was never on social media. I would send these messages out. Hey, here's my perspective on life. I've been given these different lenses. I have this gift.
Mhm.
And every day I would get an email that said this, hey, could you put this person on there? Could you put that person on there? I never thought about it. I will tell you in all sincerity, I wrote every one of those messages for myself. That's how became my catharsis writing. Never sat down planning to write. Something had to hit me when I'm getting tests in the hospital. Boom, I was like vomit. I'd get it out of my system. 4 years into it, I had 20,000 people following me on an email chain.
Wow.
Because cancer is like buying a car. You buy a car,
Mhm.
you leave the lot, you go, oh my God, I see that car everywhere. Not true.
Mhm.
Car was always there. You never noticed it until you had a direct connection with it. And I noticed that cancer or disease affects every family in some way or another. And they don't want to hear from some preacher, some statistic person giving them a bunch of crap. They want to hear from other people who've been on their path, who've been on that journey that can inspire them because they get it.
Mhm.
I was doing it for me. So I wrote a book called Starting at the Finish Line on my perspective, the understanding, the basics of planning. I did it as a catharsis. I needed to find my ways.
Give me a few minutes. You got to go away. Okay?
Mom, I want to go.
Okay, here. Hold on. I'm sorry.
You don't have to be sorry.
Oh, yeah. He was
I think this is
upstairs and all set up with TV and everything. And
I think this is a good component to what we're talking about. I've learned how important my kids are at the age that they're at because they're only going to be that way once.
true.
And I'll go in a different direction if we got a minute or two. I'll give you a different perspective on this. So my son was having
Upstairs, Jay.
5 days after my surgery. My son was having a 5-year-old father's picnic at his school.
Mhm.
And I was given this gift. I'm seeing life differently. I'm understanding this. And my wife said to me, and I have an enormous scar on my head. It looks like I have a second head. I won't know until day 10 the severity of how bad this tumor is and how aggressive it is. And she said, you don't have to go to this. And I said, I would never miss this for anything.
Mhm.
So that morning, we go to drop my kids off at school. I can't drive. I can't do anything. We get to the school, and I take my 2.5-year-old daughter, Lola, and I hold her hand. And I walk her in, and she takes her little pink jacket off, and she puts it on the little hook. And she looks at me and goes, thanks for walking me to class, Dad. I love you. I started to cry. I'm thinking, why haven't I done this more? It's not about tomorrow. It's not about yesterday. It's not about my next appointment. It's not about the next deal I'm going to close. It's about her. It's about her memory I'm creating. Do we really want to create this memory of people seeing us staring at our phones and not worrying about this this was about the now. And I came home and I was euphoric. I'm like, this is a gift. I get it right now. And she goes, listen, at 12 o'clock, you don't have to go back. You look banged up. You're pretty beat up. I go, I'll never miss this. And she drops me off at the school. And my 5-year-old son, Luke, gives me a big hug. He goes, thanks for coming, Dad. And I go, buddy, I'd never miss it. And every dad would walk out in the backyard with a little brown bag lunch. And they'd sit next to their kid for 30 minutes and spend time with them. And I am rainbows and unicorns. I didn't even think I'd be at something like this. I didn't even know I'd be alive. And we walk in the backyard, and I can't stop giving him a hug. And I look and I see every dad in the backyard sitting next to their son like this, staring at their phone. Let me get the phone in there like this.
Mm-hmm.
And I went, oh my God, that was me. That was me. I had a BlackBerry and an iPhone at that time. It was about business. It was about creating things. This wasn't about my business. This was about a memory for Luke. This was about his lunch, his 30 minutes. I had no anger. I had no animosity. But I was given something where I'm seeing this differently right now. And I'm starting to get it. And I'm all excited. I come home. I'm talking to my cancer partner, Larry. Larry, this is unbelievable. I'm a better person because of this. And 1 hour later, he got a call that he needed to get off the chemotherapy because there was nothing it could do any longer. Cancer didn't care about us. Didn't care about this connection. It does so we have to make the most of our time when we can. And the more planning that we're able to do, we're all going to deal with something in some fashion or another, some negativity. But where you really see value, you see is when people are there for you when things are bad, when they've given you the proper guidance to get things done, where you can focus on the fight instead of having this negative connotation flying all over you that brings you down to, I should have done this, I should have done that, I should have, and then nothing good happens. We are gifted in the fact that we could learn from the mistakes that others have made. But too many of us just bury our head in the sand and we don't pay attention to it. I do blame the U.S. education system for a lot of this. Like I said at the beginning, what if I didn't grow up in this family? What if I didn't make this my career? How do I know I wouldn't have been in the same boat right there? And the more we can share this and the more we can provide these stories. So when I wrote about this, and I have no problem saying this, I did 100% for myself. I never expected anybody to read it, and I didn't care. And I don't know if you remember hearing this or not, but my mother called me the night the book came out. Came out on April 28th, 2018. And March 20th, I'm sorry. I called my mom and go, hey, Mom, the book's coming out tonight. Now, I'm going to tell you word for word what she said to me. You know no one's ever going to read it, right? I go, who the hell cares about me? I'm like, what are you kidding? She goes, but you're going to put 3 copies in your safe. And when your kids are old enough, they'll be able to read the reality of what really happened in your real honest perspective. I said, Mom, it's worth it all for that right now. And 1 week later, we were #1 on Amazon in 4 different categories, and my jaw dropped. 2 weeks later, we were on ESPN. And then I just started speaking all over the country nonstop in every facet to all different types of people, doing main stages in Las Vegas and all that. And I never saw it coming. And the reason I think it happened is because there was no plan. There was no business arrangement. There was no investment component. People are attracted to honesty and realness. They want to know that if they've been put on a path that others have been put on it. They don't want to be inspired by shtick or some dude making up a bunch of crap about numbers for them. They want to hear from other people who've been through things to know that they're on a similar journey. And if that person could do it, I could do it as well too. And that became clear as day. And in sharing the necessity of planning, alleviating all that burden that comes off you to give yourself the best shot to fight with nothing weighted on your shoulders, the value unfortunately won't be foreseen in that until you go through it and you get it. And that's our job, to make people aware of it in advance.
That's what we're doing today. Thank you so much for sharing. Hold on 1 second. Jameson, go upstairs.
How old is he? How old is he?
He's 5.
I got a 9, 11, and 12 in the other room. They're done with work for the day and with their schoolwork, and now they're probably going to drive someone crazy because the weather's bad down here, right?
Yeah, it's been raining nonstop here. And
Yeah,
he's been so quiet all day, and he waits until the camera turns on. But
of
fine.
course.
Hey, please go upstairs, buddy. So I wanted to ask really quick.
Ask me anything.
I think we covered a lot of really important stuff today. So if you were to recommend one action that someone could take today towards preparing for the future, what would it be?
You know, it's a great question. And a lot of people would say, what investments do I buy all this? I would say nothing about that. The first thing I would say is that if you're married and have children, do you have a will? And if you look up Aretha Franklin and Tony Soprano and all these other people who didn't do basic components of planning that has nothing to do with your investment, it costs ridiculous amounts of money, which causes regret and resentment from the family it's being left to. Get a will. If you're married or something, get a power of attorney, just giving a legal right for someone to make all the decisions. Basic things you could do on a website. You don't have to go to a direct estate planner if you don't want to. But by not doing this, You could take a problem situation and make it much worse than you expect, and define your legacy. And I know you used that term a bunch today. Define your legacy to a negative way by not just doing some basic, simple steps.
Right. So true. That's great. Then for anyone out there that's been in the position that you were in, what would you want them to know today that you wish you knew when you're in their shoes?
That's a great question. I would tell you I learned what strength really is. And I'll share a quick story with you if you don't mind. So when I went in for chemo and radiation, my radiation, the earliest they start was 7 o'clock in the morning. And I was in a different perspective. I want to be the first person in here. I'm going to work out like a beast beforehand. I'm going to come in here. You're going to do this to me. I'm going to go wear a suit and tie. I'm going to go work for the rest of the day. And then when it comes that time, I need to go because it's going to happen. I'm just going to go home. But my day is my day. So you'll see me at 5 in the morning. I'll be there at 4:59. So Mr. Newman, the earliest appointment is 7, but we have one at 7:10. Done. And I'll be here at 6:30 every day with my laptop, with my iPad, doing what I got to do because this is my life. I own it. So I get there, and for about the first 2 weeks, I had to go for 6 weeks. First 2 weeks, the woman in front of me was a Mexican woman who looked to be in her mid-70s, emaciated. You knew where this was going. Unfortunately, you meet a lot of people that when you're on the same boat, not everybody looks the same. I knew it. And every day her son, who was a bit older than I was, would bring her in, have to almost carry her to the back room where they would do the radiation. Then he would come sit with me and radiation's only like 10 minutes long. He would sit with me and then go back and get her. And one day they come walking back and they go, Mr. Newman, today is her last day. Would you like the 7 a.m. slot? Done. I'll take it. Love it. Perfect. They go, we do something special. When someone finishes their radiation treatments, we all sing songs. We say prayers, and we let them ring a gong to show what an amazing accomplishment they've achieved. We're about to do that in the hallway. Would you like to join us? I said, thanks. You know what? I'm going to sit here and do some work with my iPad. You tell me when you're ready, but I'll just wait over here for you. And when I turned the iPad as I said that, I saw my reflection. I said, who the hell do you think you are? We're a family of warriors. How dare you say you would just sit here? And I got up, and I put my iPad down, and I walked into the hallway, and I saw this emaciated woman where we knew where this was going. There wasn't a long shelf life, with the biggest smile I've ever seen on her face. Grabbed that thing, bam, ripped that gong. People start singing, and I just started to cry. You know what I learned right there? I learned what strength was. I learned it. I got it. I looked at this from a different perspective. She was getting it. She was showing what she had. This was her moment that she was taking advantage of. And I started to look at what's strength. I don't care how much you bench press, like I was saying before, how big you are. That means nothing to me. It's deep down in your belly. And if you could find it and you could own it, that's what people are going to remember. And I saw it. And I was so thankful. And I thank Apple for making iPads that you see your reflection in, because it immediately made me hold myself accountable and let us know that she's not a warrior. We're a family of warriors, and family is supposed to be there for each other. And that's the lesson I took.
Beautifully said. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
So you mentioned earlier that, these things really should be taught in the school system, which I 1,000% agree. Just to kind of be candid, numbers and money and all that kind of stuff, I've always avoided just because I'm a creative at heart. But similar to you, I grew up in a family business, and for whatever reason, that part of just business and life in general just never got translated to me. And that's something that I've struggled with. So what are your thoughts on what would need to change within the school system? Not that this is necessarily education that needs to be kind of relayed through parents to their children, that it's something that's more publicly accepted and taught as a society.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think I have a pretty good answer for you. They need to teach people what employee benefits are. That's where you start. So everybody's going to get some type of, not everybody, but you would think the majority of people are going to get a job at some point. How do they know what a 401k is? How do they know what a match is? How do they know how to get your benefits there? But yet, if you leave the job, you may not have your benefits. People think, well, I have insurance at my company, but you left the company. You don't have that any longer. We don't have to teach them the inner workings of how a mutual fund works or anything like that. We need to teach them the basics of when you get a job, Pick the right types of benefits. Are you single? Do you have a family? Do you have children? Do you have this? There's little things we can teach them so when they go there, they have an idea. You can contact HR at any company from a fiduciary standpoint where they have to give you information on certain things and answer your questions for you. Some type of guidance to lead them to the starting line of where they're going to start their jobs, to choose the right things, because then you could look back and go, well, I should have done this. Well, when you register for most of these benefits, there's no changes you're going to make except for one time a year. That's it. And then if all of a sudden your life changes, too bad. There's nothing you can do about it. So they don't have to go into, the real basics of investing. It's employee benefits. It's legal documentation of what's a will. What's a power of attorney? What's the downside of educating our children on these types of things? So as they get into the real world, they're not just looking at it through one eye. They're seeing the whole perspective. That's where I think things need to change. On giving them the basics where they know enough or know the direction to go in to find more. And if you want guidance, get a good financial planner. Get someone who really knows what they're doing, that could take the emotion out of it and make sure you're checking the boxes. Listen, I can learn to really fix an engine if I want to. I don't want to. I'm going to hire my mechanic to do it, but I'm going to make sure I got a really good guy that I have a lot of trust in. It's the same concept. Know enough where you can do it yourself or find someone who's an expert in it to do it. But to neglect it could really be a negative for recovery and a negative for the perception on you when you're no longer here.
Wow. No, that's awesome. And I agree with you too. One thing that I usually say a lot to folks is don't necessarily delegate your weaknesses. You have to have some kind of a basic understanding so that when you do delegate it, you can effectively communicate what it is you need and what you're looking to accomplish and so on and so forth. So that just kind of makes everything you said even more important.
Yeah, I agree.
You can't just rely on somebody else. You should know, more or less what's going on and what you need to do to be prepared.
I agree with you on that too.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for joining. Where can our audience find you?
Sure. So my website is Matthew, Mathew, which my mom's the only person who calls me that, S as in Stephen Newman, MatthewSNewman.com. On there, so our books are available on Amazon, on Goodreads, on Barnes & Noble, they're which I'm still blown away by this whole thing. But on there, we've been on ESPN. We've done 3 TED Talks. I speak all over the place. There's all kinds of videos. We do a blog once a month, and we now do weekly video blogs as well too, which are all over social media also. But the easiest way to do that is to go on there, and then you have all our Instagram and everything else. Although that looks really cool with the Instagram thing right there, the handle.
Yeah, there you go. So everybody can find you right there. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining today. Really appreciate it. Everybody, don't forget to come back here next week. I go live every single Monday at 1:30 Eastern time, and we look forward to seeing you there. So everybody have a great rest of your week.
Thank you.